on Wednesday at 8 o'clock was the first time in a long time that I had just sat back and thought, wow, God, you really are amazing, because you're doing something that's out of our control. You're doing something that we don't create, you know. And so when I watched that, I thought, you know, truly the impossible is possible. Anything's possible with God. Absolutely anything is possible. If you look in your Bibles, you can look in Luke chapter 18 and just one verse this morning, in verse 27. It said, Jesus replied, "What is impossible with man is possible with God." I want to read that one more time because it's short. It won't take a lot of time for us to read it, but I want you to get the full meaning of it. Look at it on the screen and think about it with me. It says, Jesus replied, what is impossible with man is possible with God. The whole movie scene that we just watched from Facing the Giants was a underdog team that didn't have a lot of ability at the beginning because there wasn't a lot of heart, or maybe there wasn't a lot of try in them. There wasn't a cohesiveness amongst the team. You know, sometimes I think that a lot of us here from Noble, and then a lot of us are from surrounding areas, I know, but for just a second, for people that live here in this community or their kids go to this school, you know, I think for a long time we thought we were losers. You know, it's been taught somehow in this city that it's just easier to lose. When you really, really desire to win, but you think we're not good enough, or we don't have enough, or we're in 5A and our city's not like other cities, or whatever. But it just carries on for generation to generation to generation to generation. And you might have one or two teams that pop up every once in a while. The 8th grade volleyball team last year, my daughter got to play on that, and there were 6 or 7 girls that they just for whatever reason, they weren't the best talent necessarily. There was a lot better talent around, a lot better athletes even in Noble. But for whatever reason, they decided they could win. They won a couple, and then they thought they couldn't be beat. And their whole attitude changed. You know, for some reason this morning, I just think that we think it's impossible sometimes to win. But with God on our side, all things are possible. And I'm talking more than just football games and basketball games. I'm talking about our mentality of who we are and what we are. This movie, you see this coach come in that is dedicated to God and is sold out, and he doesn't give up, and he really changes the mindset of people, of that team, so that they really believe no matter what happens, win or lose, that they still are winners. And I think if you don't win, you got to know how to lose. I've seen our Little League kids at times, they'll lose, and you know, they'll be running off the field and they'll take a helmet and they'll throw it on the ground, and they're crying and screaming and throwing a fit because they lost. And that's just kids being kids, I guess. They learned it from somebody, but I don't know who. Now I'm meddling, I'm sorry. That was cheap. That was a cheap shot. My kid has learned some of those traits as well, so. Sometimes we just think that it's impossible to win, and then sometimes we don't even know how to lose. So anyway, going back to the story. 1 Samuel chapter 16 tells the story about David. Familiar story that a lot of people know. Samuel is told from God to go and to anoint a new king. There's already a king. And Samuel's thinking, if the king finds out that I'm going to anoint somebody else to be king, he's going to kill me. And God says, go to Bethlehem, and there you'll find Jesse, and I want you to anoint one of his sons to be king. And you know the story this morning, how that he goes through the whole family trying to anoint, trying to find the one that God has chosen. He goes through all of those brothers, and then he asks, is there any others? And then there's where David comes into play. The underdog, the smallest, cute little kid. But a king? I don't know. But when Samuel sees him, God talks to Samuel. He tells Samuel, he is the one. Anoint him with oil. So they invited Jesse and his sons to that sacrifice that they were having, a time of worship. And they took that little boy and they anointed him king. It's impossible that he would ever become king. It's impossible that that little boy would come up and through the ranks and do the necessary things that Israel, this whole country, would look at him with that type of honor. We know that it's impossible. And that's what God loves about it. I think that's what's so great about it, is because when God sees something, he doesn't look at it like we look at it and say, that's not going to work. Because see, I'm the world's worst at that. I have an opinion about everything. I mean, I have an opinion about the shirt you have on today. I got an opinion about what kind of car you drive. I just have an opinion about it. And I'm bad about prejudging what can or can't be done. Aren't we that way? But God's not. God's not like that. He looks and he sees this boy. He says, what great potential. Because I can mold him and I can make him and I can shape him into what I want as a king, as a leader of my chosen people. I can do that. And nobody around can say, well, he was the strongest. He was the fastest. He was the biggest. He was the best. And naturally he would be king. It's the one that's the furthest from that. He was the loser, if you will. I want to tell you today, when God chooses things that we wouldn't choose, he receives the most glory from it. And I think that I've got to be careful here, because I don't want to call us losers this morning. I don't want you to think that I'm calling you that for one minute. But if I was going to categorize myself, I wouldn't categorize myself as the best or the fastest or any of those type of things, because there's a lot of others that are better than. And we could say the same thing about ourselves, right? Somebody can sing better than us. Somebody can do this better than us. But for whatever reason, God has chosen us today to be Discover Church. And I don't know what that means to you, but it means the world to me. Because I remember it wasn't too long ago, and I don't want to bore you with stories, but it wasn't too long ago. I guess that means I'm going to bore you with the story. That this building was nothing. And it's not a lot now. I mean, I walk through it, and there's a baseboard. If you walk through the single door like you're going back to the nursery, if you look to the right, there's a baseboard that's been missing for about 6 or 8 months. It's not much. If you look over here at the vent, you can see daylight. It's been there since we installed that air conditioner incorrect. I mean, it's not even installed correctly. It's because John and Daniel and myself, there wasn't enough money necessarily to hire air-conditioned people, so we didn't pull any permits or, nothing like that. I mean, we just installed it. And it works for the most part, unless it's 100 outside, and then you guys wear short sleeves and sweat a little bit with us. It's not the best facility, but I'll tell you what it is. It's just like David. When God said, I want you to go and I want you to anoint, because I have a purpose and a reason and a promise for these people that I've chosen, and I need David to lead them. And I want the most unlikely. That's who I want. And I think that's what he's done with us today. When we started this place, we had zero money, nothing. If you're going to start a business, you need some startup money because there's going to be some cost. If you're going to start a business, you got to know that the first year or so that there's probably not going to be any profits whatsoever because you've poured all of your money into the business. And so it's not going to see a return for a while. So you better prepare and work hard in advance because it's going to be a long road. And it rings over in my head over and over and over again. My dad, as we were driving down Highway 77, and he looks up to this building and says, boy, that would make a good church. Boy, that would make a good church. Years before God would ever call us to pastor here. Feels like Samuel saying, I'm going to anoint some people. I'm going to take a group of people and I'm going to place them in Noble. Now they're going to come from all over, but I'm going to place them in this town. And they're not losers. They don't have a spirit of defeat. They don't come in and they don't act like others do. They don't let people separate them or push them away. They don't come in disgruntled and hurt and disappointed every Sunday morning. They don't care who does what or why, or they don't have all of that turmoil amongst them because they've been chosen. When I tell you, and if you've come here and you've been a visitor, you know I've told you, if God's called you here, we want you to be here. This is the place you need to be. But when God calls you somewhere else, then you need to go. I don't know what it was either. I think it's a cricket. There was a cricket that jumped from the ceiling. It scared me. We don't have money for exterminators or... No, I'm joking. He called us, though, here. Each and every one of you. I've heard a lot of pastors, I've heard a lot of preachers say, well, you're not here by accident. And it seems so cliche. I said, oh, you don't even know that I was here. I mean, really. You didn't notice that I was here. Well, it's not about us noticing. It's about God noticing and God calling you and you being here for a purpose and you being here for a reason. When David was anointed, he went through a period of time. He went through all sorts of things. He did face a giant before he became king. He did all of those things necessary. And then one day he was. It looked impossible, but with God all things are possible. I want you to listen to this part. For whatever reason, God has chosen us. For whatever reason, God has chosen us to win this city. That's a big responsibility. It's a huge responsibility. Because there's people that are counting on us to lead them and to guide them and disciple them, to teach them who God really is, to show them not just a facade of God, but His heart and who He truly is. Not to show this community about differences that we have, and not to show this community how that we can split a church and separate it out, or not how, none of that stuff. He has chosen us and anointed us for a reason. Going on 6 or 7 years now, which seems like an eternity to me, but in church years, it's very, very short. It's not a long time. If you start a business, it just takes that long for it to get rolling. Right? The business you own or the business you work in, for most of them have been established for a long, long time. I've got to be careful here because I don't want to say something that I regret. There's been a lot of churches in Noble that's been established for a long time. And I think that all of them are valuable. I think a church that runs 5 or 10 or 20 or 40, they have a purpose and a reason. People that go there like small churches, and they like maybe the pastor and what he has to say, and so they go there and they plug in. And then there's churches that are humongous, that are what they label mega churches that run thousands. And there's great purpose for those churches as well, because there's a lot of people that like to plug in at those places. And so whatever fits. For me, it's not about numbers. It's not about us being 40 or 4,000. It's about us being a driving force in this community so that people will come to know who Christ is through us. That's our goal. Somebody the other day said, I heard somebody from your church that no longer attends said that you were all about numbers, that Discover Church was all about numbers. And it didn't take much to get me fired up. Ask Christine when the internet wouldn't work the other day and they kept switching me around from different people to different people all throughout AT&T's network. Oh man, I was fired up. I turned and told her, I said, I apologize, you have to see this. But I was bound and determined to have whatever that guy's name. What was, do you remember? Eduardo? John was in the office too. I said, Eduardo, you will sit on this line until your manager gets there. He said, I can't sit on this line. We have to open this line up for a customer. I am your customer, Eduardo. You will sit on this line until you... Oh, goodness. Eduardo hung up on me. It didn't work. I can get fired up about something, and I did when somebody said that our church was all about numbers. I said, our church isn't about numbers. Our church, it doesn't matter how many people we have coming to our church. Our church is about people and investing in them and inviting them to discover who Christ is. And that's what our church is about. And if you're telling me it's about numbers, it's not about numbers. Whoa, 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 whoa. Slow down for a second, my wife says. I said, I guess I get fired up about that, don't I? She goes, well, you do a little bit, yeah. I said, I'm just so passionate about it. And when people leave and they say stuff that's not right. And obviously they didn't catch the vision. Maybe I didn't express it in the right way if they thought that's what it was about. Because Discover Church is about allowing God to take us that looks like it would be impossible, zero money to start with, no way to be able to buy this building, no way possible that John and I could quit our jobs and that we could come to work here full time and do this so that people would know who Christ. There is no way possible. And yet, look, Wednesday night, and cars are coming and lining up all the way down the road. Why? Because you know the same God that I know. You know the same God that I know, and it is possible that people will know who Christ is because of us. And here's what I'm asking you today. I'm asking you to believe with me. I'm asking you to join with me. I'm asking you to grab hold of the same vision that I have. Don't wait, and because I'm not good at asking you to volunteer. I'm not good at creating jobs for you. I'm sorry. I'm just not good at that. I'm not good at coming up to you and saying, hey, by the way, we need this. Just jump in with both feet. You see a need and you do it. The other day I drive up and there's somebody in the flower bed and they're picking all the grass out of the flower bed. And I thought, I wonder who asked her to do that. And so I asked, And the lady said, I remember you telling us one time in a sermon, if you see a need, just do it. And she goes, I decided I wasn't going to wait for you to ask me anymore. And I did it. And she worked like 3 days pulling stuff out of that flower bed. I said, what does that have to do with God? Well, it has a lot to do with God if that's your ministry. If you want a place for people to come that looks manicured and for them to be impressed and that you're proud of what God has given us, that's really important. So I'm asking you to team up with me once again. I'm asking you to jump in with both feet. And whatever it is that you love, whatever it is that you're passionate about, whatever it is that you say, this is what I like to do, then I want you to do it here. I want you to do it from here. I want you to take an opportunity that I've given you right now and say, okay, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave from this place, and you've told me that I can be a missionary now. Jim, you're our missionary of gutters. Jim does gutters. And if you need gutters, I'd call Jim. But just let me tell you this. Jim sold out to this church. From the very beginning. If you ask where Jim goes to church, he goes to Discover Church, and that's Jim's church. And if he tells you along while he's hanging your gutters about Discover Church and about God, then I apologize. Because Jim's our missionary of gutters. And that's what he's going to do. Steve and Casey have a store that's located, you've drove past it several times. It's setting in that same complex where you used to go to get your teeth worked on, the dental lodge. It's called the Faithful Prepper, right? And they're missionaries from Discover Church. They're open every day of the week. You can go in there, you can buy all sorts of items, T-shirts, Bibles, knives. They've got things that you can use to be prepared for disasters, A lot of military supplies. You say, is this an advertisement? I don't know. If you want to stop by and support somebody that loves God, I'd go by and check it out. But more than that, they share Christ inside that store. They were telling me a story last week about people that were coming in and they were asking and they were sharing. They didn't have all the answers all the time. But God anoints them. I think God's anointing their business. God's pouring into their life. And He's using them. Noble is not a losing community. And if you're a young person in here right now and you think that, then you need to change your mind. You are not a losing community. I think at the very point where we take and we put God first, where we come in and we say, God, this is your church that we're in, and we're going to worship you in it. God, this is your town that we're in, and we're going to worship you in it. God, this is your school, and we're going to worship you in it. God, this is your business, and we're going to worship you in it. God, this is your football team, and we're going to worship you in it. God, this is your band, and we're going to worship you with our instruments. God, this is yours. This is all yours, God. And if you've anointed us, then you've anointed us. And we are going to go out one by one by one, and we are going to change that which is around us to reflect and to look like you. And don't you sit here today. Oh goodness, I'm pointing fingers now. Don't you sit here today and say, that's impossible, Chad. If that's you, I hope when I'm looking around, I'm trying to catch somebody's eye. I'm ready to fight you. I get riled up pretty quick. You can't tell me that is impossible, that my God can't take the people that are in this room and when we leave this place be able to share Him in such a way that we can change the world. Don't tell me today that can't take place, because with man it is impossible. But I am not serving a man today. I am serving God. And my Bible today says that all things are possible. All things are possible with God. And He's anointed you, Discover Church, to be able to spread this word. And it's a big responsibility. And we might look like underdogs sitting up here on top of the hill. That's that little church that started with nothing. That's that little church up there that's got a little bitty staff, and they they're just whatever. Well, God looks at us like the church that's sitting on a hill. That as people drive by, that everybody can see. God looks at us like a church that when we're in the community, that people recognize who we are. And it's not because of who we are, it's because who we are in Him. We're here to invest in people and to invite them to discover who Christ is. And that is our only goal. That is our number one and our only goal as Discover Church. And whatever it takes, I'm willing to partner with you if you're willing to partner with me. And we'll see it changed. Do you believe what I say? Do you believe? Because I feel like it's from God today. I believe today that it's straight from God, straight from the throne room, where He has told me to tell you that you are anointed